Thank you for staying with us. And if you're just tuning in, it's Newsweek, where we highlight some of the biggest stories that made the headlines recently. Now, Nigerian Labour Congress has warned that it may be forced to withdraw from the dialogue with the federal government over the cushioning of the hardship brought on Nigerians by the withdrawal of petrol subsidy by President Bola Tinubu. This followed the decision by the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited to raise the pump price of petrol in its Abuja filling stations from 537 naira per litre to 617 naira. In a statement signed by NLC President Joe Ajero, the union accused the government of callousness, saying its palliative measures to address the repercussions of the subsidy removal lack transparency. But group's chief executive officer of NNPC, Mele Kyari, claimed market forces were responsible for the increase in pump price of petrol. However, Kyari said there was no shortage of product supply. I still have Olumbe and Babatunde with me in the studio. Let me come to you, Mr. Olumbe. What's your opinion to the, reaction to the reaction threat by NLC? Do you think they should pull out or continue with the negotiation?
I mean, I think it would be disingenuous for the NLC to pull out of the current negotiations ongoing with the federal government with regards to the elevation of the subsidy removal and other issues. Reason being that we were talking about communication as well as understanding. The Nigerian Labour Congress cannot in any way say that they're not aware that 96% of the federal government's revenues right now are being used to offset obligations, right? Which in effect means that for the government to be able to meet its salary obligations to the workers, we're actually borrowing money to fund that. Now, the average Joe on the streets may not have that information, perhaps, but the Nigerian Labour Congress leadership cannot say that they're not aware of this information. Secondly, the fact that subsidy was removed, subsidy was not removed by this government. Subsidy was removed by the outgoing president, and it was something that was unsustainable then. And I think President Bola Ahmed Tinubu only reiterated and said, well, subsidy is gone because we're not going to go back to where we're coming from anymore, right? So it is not as if this government came in one day and then decided, oh, we're going to remove subsidy. It was unsustainable.
That's what Nigerians believe.
Well,
the way he said it, subsidy is gone. And
well,
the next
it would have been illegal even if the government of today had continued with subsidy, because we're all aware of the bill that was signed by the outgoing president. But furthermore, and this is why I say that it will be disingenuous, because we know these things. These things are not they're not being pulled out of the air, right? And if we can excuse the average person who maybe does not have access to media, maybe does not read newspapers, that's fine. But the leadership of the NLC, I'm sure they have this information.
What would you have them do?
Well, one thing is important. We are a low-trust society, right? Which means that a lot of the problems we have in terms of people understanding and people agreeing to the issues we have today is because, we've heard it before. Governments over time have said, bear with us, we're going to make things
trust
better.
Deficit.
So there's a huge trust deficit. So what we need to do, what the government needs to do, is to ensure that every single person is carried along, whether it's in the updating or of the National Social Register that generated a bit of furor, whether it's in articulating the direct palliatives, whether it's transport, whether it's educational, sectoral, carry everybody along. Or even the governors, which is why it was a National Executive Council meeting, right? The governors, all the stakeholders have to go back to their states, educate the citizens, let them understand exactly what is going on. And I think transparency, that's really what we need.
All right, Mr. Babatunde, another thing NLC had also done is to reject the 500 billion naira subsidy palliative proposed by the government to cushion the effect of fuel subsidy removal. And now this, do you think the NLC is doing too much or that their actions are sensible? Is the government being insensitive to Nigerians, like they said?
For me, at this point in time, I think NLC as an organization needs to also put the Nigerian masses first. Why? Because it's important that if they claim they're actually fighting for Nigerians, then they also need to actually sit down and actually look at the scenario very well. If, for example, you're saying that you're pulling out, you are rejecting this, you are rejecting that, then what's the way forward? For me as an individual, I think NLC should do more in terms of engaging the government, in terms of sitting down with the government and actually find a way forward for the Nigerian masses. It is not fair on the side of the NLC to embark on or to say they are pulling out one or to actually reject what the government is actually doing in its entirety. For me as an individual, I would rather let them come in, sit down with the government and find a way to actually get through the tunnel and probably give alternatives or suggest better solutions for the federal government rather than pulling out. That is my take on that.
But what if NLC, does pull out of talks? What could be the repercussion?
The repercussion is we're going to eat up the polity. And don't forget, the Nigerian masses are, actually agitated at this point in time. We are looking at a new government and that promised renewed hope. And the government in itself is still integrating. Even the government, for example, has not even set up the cabinet. So a lot of people still need to come on board to bring about ideas, to bring about solutions, to move the nation forward. So if at this point in time, NLC is now, doing otherwise, it is going to spell a lot of doom for the nation. And this is not the time that NLC should actually do this. This is the time for NLC to work hand in hand with the federal government and consolidate whatever intents, whatever ideas that the federal government have for the good people of Nigeria. So for me, it's important that NLC comes to the table with the federal government and actually walk down the aisle with the federal government. Because like the other speaker said, the NLC leadership cannot claim that they don't understand the fact that the nation, not even just the nation, the entire world is in a precarious moment. So this is not the point where NLC can actually choose to do otherwise. This is time NLC should actually put on their thinking caps and also show empathy to the federal government so that we can move Nigeria forward.
All right, Jed.